Say that I'm packaging up my marbles, and in terms of the system and the notation that I described on the last page in the last video, I end up with this many marbles. Now let's review what exactly this means. I take my marbles, spill them out on the floor, on the table, and every time I get a handful of stray marbles, meaning one for each finger and thumb on one hand, I package up a handful of marbles into a small package. And each time I get a handful of small packages, I package them into a medium package. And each time I get a handful of medium packages, I put them together into a big package. So that a big package consists of a handful of medium packages, each of which is a handful of small packages, each of which is a handful of marbles. Furthermore, this notation tells us that I have this many of the big packages this size, this many of the medium packages this size, this many of the small packages this size, and then this many marbles left over. Now, how many marbles, what would that actually look like if you had that many marbles? It looks a lot more than the number of dots that we have on this page, because certainly this package of marbles here, and this package and this package here contains a whole bunch of marbles in it that we're not showing just with this symbolic notation. What would it actually look like? Well, it turns out to be exactly the number of marbles that we had here on the cover page of our counting chapter here in this series. I calculated exactly that if we were to take this selection of marbles here and package them into big, small, medium, and leftover marbles, it would end up looking exactly like this. And the great thing is that it's consistent. It's the same thing day after day. I have a standardized system where if I go into the procedure every day with the same fingers on my hand, then every day I'll make the same size small packages, the same size medium packages, the same size large packages. And so if my marbles has stayed the same, every day they're going to end up being structured in such a way that they come out to exactly this many. And so if I draw in my notation on a piece of paper something that looks like this, every day I'm going to be able to tell, okay, do I have this many big, this many medium, this many small, this many left over, and I can tell if I've lost or gained any. So the next question was going to be, is there a better way to write this? Is there another way to write it? Well, certainly there are other ways to write it, and hopefully you thought of some of your own. Which ways are better or worse? Well, that's not a matter of mathematical truth. That's kind of a matter of preference. And so instead of saying one way is right or wrong, we can simply talk about, well, what is good or bad, what may be some advantages or disadvantages to the different systems. We can all invent our own system for representing this many marbles. Even if we all agree that we're going to package them in the same way using the fingers on our hand, the way that we're going to symbolically represent it on a piece of paper without having to draw this many dots, we can all come up with our own ideas about what's the best way to do that. Well, one idea, just for the sake of consideration, is, well, what if I notice that in my drawing like this, just like on the last page, I'm always drawing the bigger packages first, going from left to right. I always draw the bigger, and then the medium, and then the small, and then what's left over. So in some sense, I could drop all of these squares that represent the packages and say that I just wrote this. Now the correspondence here is clear. I just take, instead of drawing this whole picture, I just draw the number of dots inside there, and instead of drawing this whole picture, I just draw this, and here I just draw this, and here I draw this. And we know, we're just going to remember when we do this that the number over here, the farthest to the left, represents the biggest packages, and then as we move to the right, the packages gradually get smaller until we're just left with stray marbles over here. Now, this would work, although there's some potential problems or pitfalls either way. Certainly, one advantage of this system down here is that it's less drawing. I don't have to draw all those square boxes. But it has its disadvantages as well. It can cause confusion. Say that I draw this. Well, what does that mean? One person could look at this picture and say, oh, that means this. Another person could look at the same picture and say, well, that just means 1, 2, 3 marbles, because they kind of blur together. It looks kind of like maybe these are just 3 marbles in a line. So, that kind of inspires me. That's one reason why I didn't want to just draw these marbles here just in a row, because I was concerned that if I drew this and then this, it could be confusing. Wait a minute. Do these all line up together into one package? Or is this a package on its own and then these are left over? It kind of depends. Is this supposed to be a space here, or is it just the fact that is this supposed to be a space here? It's not clear. What is the separation between the different package sizes? Now, there's different things that I could do. One thing that I've done here is I've drawn my dots in different shapes. When I have 3 dots, I draw them kind of on a diagonal like this. One just by itself. When I have 4, I've drawn them in this shape, just so that they don't kind of blur and merge together. I guess another idea would just be of what I've done here, could just draw circles around them to separate a space between them. I guess for that matter, I could just draw a line to show where the separation is. So see, there's lots of ideas. This would work. This would tell me that these are my strays, these are my small packages, these are my medium, and these are my large. And I've drawn, my line keeps them separated so that my pictures of my dots don't blur or merge together. If I drew this, then I would have this many stray, this many small, and this many medium, which raises another issue, or a very closely related issue, which is you always have to be careful what happens if when we package our marbles together. It just so happens that maybe I can make large packages and then medium packages, and I don't have enough marbles to make any small packages, but I still have some leftover marbles left over. In other words, one package size doesn't exist. Say that I have this many marbles. Now, if I don't have any kind of separation, any squares or circles or lines to separate them, this could be confusing. Someone could take this and say, oh, you mean this many big packages, this many medium. Here you've got a space because you don't have any small, and this many left over. Or somebody else could look at this picture and say they might not think that this was a space here. They might just think my drawing was imperfect and these dots were kind of spaced in kind of a funny way, and they might think, oh, you have this many left over, that must mean you have this many small and this many medium. Well, these two pictures, these are entirely different things. This many marbles is entirely different from this many. Look, this has a few big packages. This doesn't have any big packages. This only has, you can only make medium packages here. So this one's got a lot more than this one, and it could be confusing, all because we weren't sure if this meant that something was missing or not. This relates to, shows the significance. We haven't really talked about the number 0 yet, but this is the significance of the number 0 that is going to, if you can be aware of this problem now, it's going to carry through all of mathematics. Really, anytime you're doing mathematics, you always have to be careful of the 0 exceptions. If something doesn't exist, if you're assuming that something exists and it doesn't exist, if I'm assuming that I have small packages but really I don't have any, there's room for confusion here. Does this mean that there's no small packages, or are these the small packages and these are the strays, or what? This is a problem that goes through all of mathematics, and the sooner you get used to it, the better. The 0 exception issue is that we always need to be on guard for the case when there's nothing of some particular class of objects, when there's none of something. And so in this case, I happen to actually like my squares. My squares here, I like this representation better than this one for that many marbles, because this kind of explicitly shows that I don't have this space here. It shows that I don't have any small packages. I have small packages, but it's empty. It doesn't have any marbles. There's none of them. So we're going to move on to talk about other counting systems, closely related ones, where well, what if we do this same kind of packaging system, but we don't always use the fingers on our hand? What other than using the fingers on one hand, what other counting systems could you use similar to this one? We're going to start talking about that next, but I'm not going to totally abandon this, because I actually like the counting system the one-handed counting system that I have here with these squares. And so whenever we come back to this in the future, I'm going to stick with my square packaging pictures with my dots inside of them, and I'm not gonna make the squares disappear. I actually like the squares. It works for me, and I think I'm going to stick with it whenever we do our one-handed counting system. And this happens all the time in mathematics research. The best idea isn't always the last one. Sometimes you may have a good idea, you may come up with another idea and realize, oh, actually the new idea is worse than the old one, and you revert back to the old one. So don't always assume that the last idea is the best one. This is the nature of research. We move, we sometimes move 2 steps forward and 1 step back, or 1 step forward and 2 steps back, and we move back and forth trying to find the right balance of the right idea. And in this case, I've explored one possible idea of dropping my boxes, and I decided, you know what, no, I don't like that after all. I'm going to revert. I actually like my old idea better. And so whenever I draw the one-handed counting system for the rest of these videos and these notes, I'm going to stick with, I actually like my system here of drawing boxes. And if it so happens that I have, like in this case, I have a number of marbles where there's no small packages, well then I just draw, I can draw that size of a package, or say that there's no, say that I have one big package, no medium packages, no small packages, and then two stray marbles left over. I can draw it like this. I can still draw my packages, and just there's no dots inside of them, meaning I don't have any packages of this size. I only have one package of this size, and then the 2 left over.